Since LeBron signed his max extension to stay in LA, there have been a lot of reactions. Brian Windhorst was positive, saying, "Oh, this means LeBron trusts the front office to trade Russ and win." But the LA Times said the Lakers will be mediocre at best. The only thing I haven't heard is what this means about LeBron James. Most people are mad at the Lakers, saying this is like when they gave Kobe that big deal that hurt the team. No, it's not. In 2013, LA made Kobe the highest paid player in the NBA off an Achilles tear, and they hadn't even seen him back on the court yet. So, in all due respect to Kobe, the contract was a disaster. He went on to have his career worst field goal percentage, the worst shooter of anyone who scored at least 20 points a game the last 50 years. People didn't even show up to watch, it was so bad. The Lakers' attendance that year was 11th in the NBA, even worse than the Clippers. LeBron, though, is actually an MVP type player when he's healthy. I know I'm gonna get a lot of pushback for that, but people forget. Last December alone, he averaged over 30 points on 56% from the field and 40% from three. He ended the month scoring 30 plus in 7 straight games for the first time since 2013. The only reason LeBron wasn't in MVP talks last year is because the Lakers held him back. Then he re-signs with them, and you can't tell me it's because of the moves they made this offseason. They got a bunch of dudes who were just awful from 3 last year and who suck at perimeter defense. Oh, you know, 3 and D, just like the 2 most important things in the NBA. And of course, they still have Russell Westbrook. Now, LeBron could have used his signature as leverage for them to trade Russ. Obviously, it was his idea to get Russ in the first place, but we're past the point of pointing fingers at whose fault this is. It's time to fix it. Imagine how uncomfortable LeBron could have made things if he refused to sign the extension. It would have hung over training camp. Everyone would be asking questions. It's obvious LeBron was upset that they didn't move Russ at last year's trade deadline. He tweeted that Rams GM Les Snead is his type of guy because Les Snead doesn't care about trading draft picks to win now. Then at the All-Star break, he praised OKC's GM Sam Presti. He said the door's not closed on returning to Cleveland. So all that bark about the team improving and zero bite when it came down to holding them accountable. He just signed the extension and was like, oh well, I hope you guys get better. What happened to win at all costs LeBron? The killer mentality. What LeBron used to do was fly into a team when they had plenty of assets to improve. He left Cleveland the first time for Miami when they had cap space to sign him and Chris Bosh and eventually acquire Ray Allen. Once they used up all their assets, he left to Cleveland, who had cap space and young players to trade like Andrew Wiggins. Then he did it again to the Lakers, who had cap space, they had good young players to trade, and they beefed up the roster and acquired AD. He's like an evil farmer who uses up soil to grow his crops, destroys it, and then just moves on to the next piece of fertile land. The old LeBron would not have signed. He would have left this Lakers team because he used it all up and gone to like the Cavaliers, who are young and ready to win now, or trade for win now players. But LeBron stayed because winning is no longer his priority. What no one is saying is LeBron is officially in his Michael Jordan Wizards days. MJ came out of retirement and gave up being a GM and part owner because he loved the game. Winning was no longer his top priority. He just wanted the challenge. I mean, yeah, he still wanted to win, but that Wizards team was so bad that was not realistic. Now, for the first time in LeBron's career, winning is not his top priority. It's lifestyle. He is so comfortable with his business and his family in LA, he is willing to not win to be comfortable. He might tell himself, yeah, we can still win, but he's not gonna do whatever it takes. Like, you know, move to another city. And LeBron is still really talented, like MJ was. In fact, Jordan and Kobe Bryant were the only players averaging 25 points, 5 assists, and 5 boards. At the 01 All-Star break, he was one of the leaders in MVP talk. People think Wizards Jordan sucked. He did not. but the Wizards around him weren't good enough and his body let him down. MJ tore his meniscus in his right knee. A freak accident running into one of his own teammates. Had nothing to do with age. Remind you of anyone? We all said that when LeBron rolled his ankle on Solomon Hill or when he strained his ab last year. Then Jordan ended up playing all 82 games his final year at age 40, but the highlight of that season was all about celebrating Jordan. Vince Carter gave MJ his starter spot at the All-Star game. Mariah Carey sang to him at halftime. Standing ovations for his final game. That's not how you want to see a true winner go out. But it's going to be the same thing with LeBron. Think about it. All about just LeBron himself. Passing Kareem's scoring record. It's no longer about winning. But the one thing LeBron could have done is take less money. The Lakers can have about $34 million in cap space next offseason, which is good enough for a young max player, but not the realistic older ones that they could get. But the reason I'm not mad at LeBron for not taking less is it doesn't matter if they do trade Russell Westbrook. That $34 million in cap space assumes Russ's money comes off the books, but if they replace Russ with some other contract, they wouldn't have max cap space anyway. And so if Rob Pelinka told him, yeah, we're definitely gonna trade Russ, then taking a pay cut made a lot less sense. We know LeBron wants them to trade Russ for Kyrie Irving, but unless the Nets trade KD, I just don't see it happening. And right now, the Nets don't even appear to be ready to take Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant. So what can the Lakers do? One underrated option is to trade Russ and a pick to the Jazz for Mike Conley and Bojan Bogdanovic. The Jazz are in rebuild mode. They would love a draft pick. They don't need Conley and Bojan. On the Lakers, Conley runs point. He's good in the playoffs when healthy. Bojan is one of the best three-point role players in the league. That is exactly what LA needs. Obviously, they both suck on defense, but they're on expiring contracts. Mike Conley's deal is non-guaranteed next year, so for one pick, the Lakers can have two valuable veterans this coming season and that $34 million in cap space next year. With that money, they can retool in free agency, even if it's not enough for a max player, kind of like what they did before the bubble season. They could split up that money to get like Josh Hart, Seth Curry, and Christian Wood, or they could spend it all on one near max guy like Jeremy Grant. The problem with that rumor of like Russ and picks to the Pacers for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner is Buddy Hield's contract would ruin their cap space next offseason. By the way, that $34 million still assumes that Talen Horton-Tucker opts out and goes elsewhere. But no matter what ends up happening, LeBron has chosen to spend his final years on a non-contender because it's comfortable, just like Michael Jordan. The LA Lakers are now the LA Wizards. Unless they get Kyrie, because honestly, I think Kyrie is the absolute best fit for this team. He's a shooter, which is what they need. He can play point guard, which frees up LeBron to play more defense because he's not carrying such a big load. And obviously, Anthony Davis needs to have a huge rebound for them to be respectable on defense at all. But the worry is Kyrie in that locker room. Obviously, he's been a toxic player for the last 5+ years, but he says he's just misunderstood. And actually, when I really dug into his story, he might be right. Check it out.